Hello, everyone. Today is July 24th, 2023. My guest today is Elliott Beckstrom. Elliott is a hunter, angler, and chef. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Elliott.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how long have you been hunting and angling?
Oh, I've been fishing since before I can remember. So I think I caught my first fish when I was 2 or 3. So 25 plus years, 20, closer to 30 years almost.
Wow.
And then hunting, I've been hunting since I was 12 because my shop class teacher from middle school actually got me into it.
No way.
Yep.
So, do you have family or anyone in your family that hunts?
No, nope. I'm the only hunter in my family.
Wow. And how did your shop teacher, get you into it?
Yeah, so his name's Mr. Roach, and in 6th grade and at the middle school I went to, everyone would do each elective, but for 6 weeks. So you do 6 weeks of shop, you do 6 weeks of home ec, you do 6 weeks of computers, and a couple other ones. And the first day of that shop class, and I guess he does it in every single class, but first day of that shop class in 6th grade, he said, "Does anybody in here, do you or your families hunt or fish? Raise your hand." And so me, one of my best friends, Alex, and another friend named Alex, actually all three of us raised our hands. And he's like, "Okay, you three stay after class." And we look at each other like, what the fuck? Like, are we in trouble? Like, why do we have to stay here? And he's like, "All right, so what do you guys do? Do you salmon fish? Do you hunt? Like, what do you guys do?" And so my really good friend Alex, he's like, "Yeah, my family's been hunting. Like, my dad takes us on pheasant hunts and pig hunts, all that good stuff, yada, yada, yada." He asked the other Alex, and I knew the other one too. We'd fished together in Boy Scouts and stuff. And he says, "Yeah, my dad's got a boat. We fish out of Half Moon Bay. We do salmon and halibut, all the other stuff." And he asked me, and I was like, "Yeah, grandpa was a commercial fisherman in Santa Cruz, so grew up doing, the ocean thing, a lot of salmon, a lot of rockfish, some albacore, halibut, crab, all that." And so, he basically started making deals because he's like, "Well, yeah, I love to hunt fish." So he's like, "Yeah, grandpa take me out salmon fishing?" Like, and so basically what he offered up is he's like, "Well, do you have any interest in hunting?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was like, "My family doesn't hunt." He's like, "I'll make you a deal. Because you get your grandpa to take me out on a couple salmon fishing trips, I'll teach you how to duck hunt." Because I grew up in Palo Alto, and right across Highway 101, the baylands out around the San Francisco Bay, there's actually a lot of public land there. So from middle school, it's a 9-minute drive to the gate at one of the federal refuges that we can hunt at. So basically worked out the deal. We took him fishing a few times. He made me go get my hunter education. Got that. And then, yeah, that first season, I ended up hunting with him almost 20 days because we would go Wednesdays after school straight from, well, the guns weren't at school. His house was pretty close. We'd swing by, grab all the stuff, go out and go hunt. We hunted every Wednesday and every Saturday and Sunday that season, pretty much right there behind Palo Alto. So started fast.
That's awesome. What a crazy experience.
Yep.
And was it just you or was it your two friends as well?
So my best friend Alex, my first hunt ever was with him. So him and his dad and me and Roach went together and all went and hunted. And so yeah, he'd come with us sometimes, and like his whole family hunts. So they'd go out, or we'd all meet up in the parking lot and go hit a couple different spots. But yeah, so him and I have been hitting public land, hunting spots together for 18 years. So, yeah.
You and Alex?
Yeah, me and Alex. Yep.
That's awesome. And was it more than just that 1 year that you went out with Mr. Roach?
No, we're actually still buddies to this day. So I hunted with him. He was a smart guy. So he knew that if he got people our age to hunt, In California, at some of the refuges, there's junior blinds where you have to have a junior hunter with you. So they have to be under 16 years old to be able to hunt the blind. The adult can hunt as well, but if you don't have a junior, you can't go to the blind. And so usually they're open. So instead of going up and showing up to, a refuge that's super crowded with 300 or 400 guys trying to get on, you don't have a reservation, you don't have a lotto number or any of that, you got a little kid with you, you can walk up to the window and say, hey, we'll take J1 or J, whichever blind, and show up and go, and you basically have a guaranteed spot. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that was his whole motive, but yeah, we're still buddies. We were in the same duck club my senior year of high school. So we bought into the same place, and there was more goose hunting, doing a lot of snows and speckled bellies and stuff. But yeah, him and I fished salmon together like probably 2 years ago. And then we had a boat up at Loch Lomond, one of the reservoirs above Santa Cruz when I lived in California. He ended up selling me one of his, and he brought another one. So we'd all go up there and fish. And yeah, so still buddies with him, but I probably hunted over 100 days with him for sure.
Wow. That's incredible. And so you hunted ducks. When did you start moving on to other species?
So I hunted ducks. Next season, that was the first season I only hunted ducks. I mean, I think I shot a goose or two, but same kind of difference. I count waterfowl with waterfowl. And then the next year we dove hunted because he's from Monterey County. One of his buddies had some land. So we went, dove season opens September 1st, Labor Day, go and smash a bunch of palomas. And at the time, my family's from Santa Cruz, so it was like a 20-minute drive. So shot some doves. I think we'd kicked up like a pheasant on a refuge, killed one of those. And he does the bandtail pigeon hunting. So we went and did that down in Big Sur. That's pretty cool. But it's only like 2 days a year in December, I think. But yeah, mostly all birds until I think I was 15. I shot my first buck with a bow up in Canada. So I'd gone up with family friends with my dad one year, made a deal with the guide that if I could sell 5 spots, I could go for free. And got another one of my best friends, actually lives 3 blocks up from me in Denver now. Him and his whole family went, and they didn't just do the waterfowl hunt in Alberta. They got deer tags too. So I got a waterfowl hunt and a deer tag. And I shot a 9-point with my bow, and that was my first buck. It was a whitetail. It was a nice one.
That's awesome.
So that was the first lure into big game hunting.
That's not easy to. Did you organize that hunt yourself to get up to Alberta, or did you have help from anyone else?
It was an outfitted hunt. So, I mean, the first year we went, my cousin Bill, he's much older than me, but he's like a second cousin. They'd gone like 5 years in a row. And so he already knew the outfitter, Rob Reynolds, Ranchland Outfitter. They're amazing. I actually went last year with Corey and their family for like a reunion kind of trip. But yeah, Rob has the program dialed. So, you fly into Edmonton, take a van out to Elk Point. He's got the lodging all set up, and they've got bird finders all over the place, putting stakes in fields where they all were the day before and stuff. And then obviously for the deer, for the whitetail, they do the trail camera thing and have tree stands hung up and all that good stuff. So, it was relatively plug and play. I mean, the hardest part is if you are bringing your own guns, like getting through customs, and the bows they didn't care as much about, but yeah, just kind of making sure you have everything and don't forget something. Because if you're 4 hours out of Edmonton and there's nothing around, so you definitely got to have your gear lined up with you.
Yes, that's with hunting. It's like, I mean, a lot of people who camp, the level of complexity when it comes to like hunting, killing, harvesting an animal is way higher with what you need.
Yeah, because the camping setup's the baseline, and then if you're putting it into perspective of having to pack something out, even your camping rig better be as light and as durable as possible because you're probably going to be somewhere far away from even your pickup. So yeah, the gear thing starts getting pretty heavy for the hunting deal for sure.
Yes. And so you went with you through the outfitter, you were able to do the international hunt in Alberta as your first big game hunt.
Yep. Yep. They get the tags and the licenses. It's all taken care of.
So what was it like having someone like Mr. Roach to guide you for those first several years hunting?
Oh, it was great. I probably got called a dumb motherfucker more times than I can count. I mean, you know, no, it was awesome though. I mean, he's still a mentor to me. He's a great guy. I mean, I know his kids, his wife well, like, so he's like a great friend also. But I think the hardest thing with hunting, and especially it's usually passed down through family, right?
Yes.
So if you don't have a mentor like him, or like I had him as a mentor, get me out there. I mean, I could drive either, right? At 12 years old, like you can't I could ride a bike to where we hunted if I really wanted to, but like riding a bike with a shotgun in California, it's like, you're probably going to be what's hunted, instead of showing up where you want to be. But yeah, I mean, he taught me how to duck hunt, like kind of the strategies behind it, introduced me to Ducks Unlimited and stuff as well. So like, that's what kind of got me volunteering with them. And then you obviously learn more about waterfowl when you're talking about habitat, like why we're doing this stuff, like how duck stamps, are involved in all that and all that good stuff.
What's Ducks Unlimited?
It's a nonprofit organization that basically is all around for restoring wetlands. So you'll see the signs that it's like a white cutout of a duck head. They fund money into like refuges. They'll fund it into private land. They'll buy land back and do reclamation. And so this where wetlands may have been filled in for like farming or for something like that. They will change that. They'll work on it and make that natural habitat again. So, they'll plant coolies and plant, native to whatever area. So like Ducks Unlimited out here in Colorado, like they're not planting a bunch of coolies and smartweed and water grass and stuff that you'd have in like the marshes in California. But what they're doing is, turning ponds back into their more natural habitat and planting, willows that are native to like the South Platte River and Arkansas River and stuff like that. And, helping with water rights and things of that nature to make sure that the ducks have a place to nest. Like the prairie pothole region starts basically just north of Colorado in Nebraska and goes through the Dakotas. So they do all that stuff for nesting and brooding, etc. But yeah, they go from all the way up at the Arctic Circle in Alaska and Canada, all the way down through Mexico. They've got projects and yeah, it's a great organization. Anybody that hunts ducks should definitely be a member. It's like $25 a year, and all the money goes towards, making more ducks. There's more ducks now than there were in the 1920s by a lot. So a lot of that's attributed to their success.
And going on to what you just said, it's not just ducks alone that there are a lot more of. There are a lot more of most wild animals, or not, I don't know, the big ones, and especially the ones that are regulated through hunting. The American hunting model is very successful. Seems to be very successful.
Oh yeah, I mean the elk herd in Colorado. I think the last I read back in like 1930 something, it was down to hundreds of animals. There weren't even 1,000 of them, and now there's 250,000 of them. So if you think about that's a span. I mean, obviously it's 80 years, but still, that's more than 80 times what they had. And it's all due to conservation. And part of it's because, to your point, the American way that we've set up hunting is on conservation, right? It's conserving the land, still using the resources, but using them responsibly, and also, basically it's almost like a circle, right? Every single dollar that goes to hunting tags and fishing licenses and to, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, California Fish and Game, any of those different ones, it goes, those are the only dollars you spend to the government that 100% go back to wildlife. And almost all those dollars are just hunting and fishing licenses. So it's funny when you talk about, oh, we want to be more animals, we want the environment, to be more natural. Hunting and fishing, hunters and fishermen and women are the ones putting money directly towards doing that. So, the model, it's obviously, that's why tag numbers fluctuate, right? So just here up in Northwest Colorado and in Wyoming, there are huge die-offs because the winter was so thin. There's 4 to 5 feet of hard packed snow, and they cut tag applications by 90%, almost completely closed off some units for antelope, for elk, for mule deer. To that, because there's mortality rates that are natural for animals, right? And so obviously there's natural deaths of gets eaten by lion, or whatever. There's ridiculous stuff from hit on the road. And the hunting rate that's in there, it's actually to manage keep the populations healthy. So to prevent disease, to prevent forage being completely wasted out. But yeah, the American hunting model built around conservation is pretty incredible in what it's achieved over the last, 80 to 100 years.
And I don't think there are many places in the world. I don't know if there are any besides like Canada, which is, very similar to the American hunting model, that has the level of wildlife that the U.S. has.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm not positive. Africa is not foreign to me. I'm not really safari hunter or anything, so I haven't looked into it too much. Maybe in some of those Central Asian states, there's something like that, but the volume of game is not there. I don't think. And compared to what you mentioned in America, like it's definitely a little bit different, but it's all the diversity of habitat we have here, right? If you guys, an hour that way, you can get 14,000 plus feet in the Rockies, and animals out there, there's sheep, there's everything, and that goes all the way down the plains out there in eastern Colorado, and western Colorado's a lot of rolling sage flats, and then out in California, the Central Valley that's almost at sea level, the Delta, the biggest river system on the west coast of Alaska, that all runs through there. There's this tidal waterway, all the natural marsh that used to be all over. California, so the U.S. has the diversity of wildlife that we have is kind of insane as well.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And you're speaking about Colorado. You now are a resident of Colorado, correct?
Yep.
So, when you were here in Northern California in the Bay Area, that's one of the best places to hunt birds, waterfowl in the country. Is it?
Oh, hands down. Yeah, hands down. There's no contest.
Wow.
No contest. It is unfreaking believable.
And which part? You mentioned the federal refuges near Palo Alto, but are there other? I think also in the valley there's some pretty good spots.
Yeah, Central Valley. So the reason is the entire Pacific Flyway includes all of Alaska, pretty much, in Western Canada, even like a lot of them in Alberta and in California. They'll winter in Central Valley, almost all of them. And it's a huge number. Like Central Valley geese, more than half of their entire population winters in the Central Valley. So no matter where they came from, whether they were in Western Alaska or North Central Canada on the Arctic Circle with the brooding, etc., they end up in California. And once they get there, they don't leave. So if you think about that, it's like hunting migratory birds. Like in Colorado, we get pushes. They can get pushed, they're here, and they're gone. Some of them might stay, but a lot of them they're coming through it. So we'll see the migrator flights like thousands and thousands and thousands. And then they keep going to Texas, or wherever they're going out here. But California, for speckled and pintail, well, more than half of their entire populations actually winter in California. So there's loads of them, and the diversity of ducks in California is a lot broader than out in Colorado too. In that northern area, like you can pretty much shoot any duck in North America other than a black duck, pretty much, or like a fulvous whistling duck or something in Northern California, or have the opportunity to potentially. Doesn't mean there's going to be a ton of them, but they're probably there at some point.
That's awesome. And so you still come back, I'm guessing, to California to hunt birds?
Oh yeah. How could you not?
Yes, I don't hunt many birds. I'm mostly a big game hunter, but I really want to get out there.
Yeah, I'd say it's worth it. The other thing in California that's different than a lot of other states is the public land. Those federal and state wildlife refuges are the best habitat for them, hands down. So you can get on and figure out you can very well
Are the state wildlife refuges huntable? Are they legal to hunt on?
Yeah, it's not all for the area, and sanctuary for the birds. It's so good is that the zone will hold a massive amount of those birds that come down from California. So I great. One of the rice that you can get in California all over the place, and for miles and south and but hunting is where you live. So if you get into the hunt area on the refuges, it can be lights out for sure.
Okay, got it. And so now that you're in Colorado, has your, the way you hunt, the types of animals you hunt, has it changed?
Yeah, definitely. Colorado doesn't have much water, we have a lot of the water. It's all frozen on the mountains, right? So the heads of the Colorado River, the Arkansas River, the Rio Grande, all of those are here, and they're fed by our mountains, but it's mostly snow. So as far as the waterfowl hunting goes, Colorado's duck hunting, you can hit really good days. California, I mean, we had seasons where we shot limits almost every public hunt day. So almost every Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday through the whole 100-day season. Here, like I said, it's more migratory. So like you get a push of fresh birds and you can shoot some. It's mostly mallards, which is cool coming from California. Although it's funny because here people get all excited if they shoot a pintail or a northern shoveler or something like that, where you see billions of them in California, it feels like, or you shoot your pintail in the morning and watch 50 of them land in the decoys the rest of the day. And it's like, you guys are annoying. But what Colorado does have that's very good on the waterfowl front, the Canada goose hunting is insane. It is very good. It's probably like similar to the California equivalent of duck hunting. There are honkers everywhere. There's not a lot of public land to hunt them on, but the clubs out here are pretty affordable, and they'll have many properties where usually California, you're in a specific blind or specific pit. The club I belong to, it's got 98 different properties, which include different fields. There's soybeans, corn, sugar beets, pea fields, all that kind of stuff. And then also we do have water properties, some of the rivers, and then some ponds, some lakes, etc. But yeah, hunting Canada geese was definitely different from California, where it was mostly specks and snows. So big decoy change. Having to buy a lot of full bodies and all that other stuff, and kind of figure out how to work them. They act a little bit different. And then on the big game front, obviously, there's a lot of different opportunities here, or more accessible opportunities here than California. California has elk and antelope. They have mule deer. But Colorado has the most elk of anywhere in the country. Tags are over the counter. For residents, it's $40. You can get a archery tag or second or third rifle over the counter. Hunt most of the mountain side of the state that has them. So that's one thing. I'm not a big elk guy. I'm a mule deer guy. And getting mule deer tags as a resident is pretty easy. All mule deer tags here are by draw, which is pretty typical for most places. But yeah, the habitat's really cool because you can hunt them from above the timberline all the way down to, just the lower sagebrush, and you can pick a unit that kind of fits what you want to hunt or, different areas you want to check out. But if you want to do like an early season archery hunt and go up to 10,000, 11,000 feet and try to shoot a muley above the tree line, like you can do it. I like hunting the sage personally. It's just fun. It's difficult, but there's plenty of that around too. And it's easy to layer up tags. So if you get a mule deer tag, you can just buy an elk one in case you see one, and you can shoot them depending on the unit, obviously. But and then antelope tags they're still easy to draw, but compared to California, like much easier and all that stuff. But I think the biggest difference is that being in Colorado, the Wyoming border is an hour and 20 minutes from where I'm sitting. And
Wow.
So you can hunt Wyoming. I can get to Montana in 5. So your other Western states that offer a lot of, hunting opportunities are very, very close. Obviously, California, you've got Nevada and Oregon there, and Arizona. But if you live in San Francisco trying to drive to Arizona to go hunt a tag, it might still be 14, 15, 16 hours, where in Colorado, even Utah is like 4 hours away to that eastern side of it, where a lot of their good tags are too. And New Mexico borders the south. There's really good elk hunting down there on the northern border of it. So Colorado's kind of cool because it's just central that way. And then obviously your plain states, if you're a whitetail guy. Kansas is right next door, and that's where a lot of the biggest ones live. So if that's what you like to do, my buddy's got a tag for Kansas this year, and he'll be hunting for whitetail. So it's kind of cool because you got access to a lot of different things in different states to hunt as well.
Yes, that's very cool. And you mentioned that you have different decoys for the geese, the Canadian geese, than the geese in California. And you said they were full bodies in Colorado. What types are they in what types did you use in California?
Yeah, we use the same ones in California, but we just have it'd be speckle belly or snow decoys. So and paint jobs, basically is the main difference. But yeah, we run same kind of brands, Final Approach, a lot of them. Had some green headgear mixed in, some Bigfoots. When you put together a full spread, which we did, we've got 8 guys in the same club. It's like you look for Facebook Marketplace deals. We've probably got 300 or 400 decoys at least, another 2,000 snow socks and stuff. And
wow,
so, yeah, you just kind of you need numbers for them typically for the field hunts. Like you can do a small spread if you're like on the X and like go really natural. Sometimes that works better, but out here there's so many other guys hunting that usually if you see the bird sitting in the field, it's at least a couple hundred of them. So it looks more natural. But yeah, that's kind of the difference. So got a trailer to fit all that stuff because it definitely takes a lot of space.
Wow, a couple hundred is a lot of decoys.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you want to get out there and you want to kill a bird.
Yeah, or a big pile of them.
Yeah, a big pile of them.
Yeah.
And another thing you mentioned is you like mule deer hunting instead of elk. What's the reason for that?
I don't know if it's an either or. I think the elk thing, like I've actually seen a lot of elk when I've been mule deer hunting in Colorado. I hunt by myself a lot, and shooting a bull, especially a few miles back in by yourself, is going to be a pretty big endeavor to get them out and to do it ethically, right? Before you have some meat rot or anything like that, especially in the earlier seasons. So that's part of it. The other thing is, I don't know, I just love mule deer hunting, and like they're in the sage, and I love the sagebrush. It's like open Wild West, just amazing views. And I'd say I like it because there's like a lot more action. I haven't archery hunted elk during the rut. One of my best friends, Steve, that lives here, he's shot 4 bulls with a bow in 4 seasons. Actually, he's really good. Him and his brother Rye, and that's exciting because they're like calling him in and all that stuff. But you know, it's the other thing is you got to get a crew basically together to go do that, and you can't run a group of like 8 guys with 8 tags and expect to shoot 8 bulls, you know, like it's just not happening. Maybe, but the odds are very low, especially if you're hunting like public land. So I've never really planned around it. It's also because I've saved up a lot of like points and things for mule deer. I have an elk tag in Montana this year because I drew it with the deer tag, but usually when I buy an elk tag, it's like an afterthought. It's like, I'll go try to shoot one. The other thing is Colorado has an insane amount of pressure for elk. Like I would not, if I wanted to go on a very good elk hunt, this is not where I'm coming unless I'm hunting private land, just because usually like last winter, Steve and I were hunting mule deer, and in the unit we had, there was, I think 250 mule deer tags, and CPW on the report from second rifle season said 5,000 elk hunters were in there. So if you can imagine being a mule deer hunter and there's that many elk hunters running around all over, they push everything around and they spook all the animals and they all end up running on the ranches and stuff. So that's another thing is like I'll hunt elk next year in Colorado during archery, but it's because I've saved up 5 points and I'm going to get a very limited like archery unit to go do it in, because I don't want to deal with the hunting pressure. It's super annoying, to be honest. Like Colorado is, there's a lot of people here that don't like it. We hope it's going away, though, the counter thing. But it does give you an opportunity to go do it. If you want to go do it, you can definitely do it. And there's a lot of land to hunt, and a lot of guys do kill them. But I have to pick my battles, and like that's not the battle I'm choosing, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, that's a really good point. You have to pick your battles. You can't, and it's something you mentioned earlier, because you know, post your hunts on social media, and so you can't just be hunting all year long, all the time. And you mentioned some people ask you how you're able to, you know, maintain that. And so you mentioned that you have a job still and that you're still, you know, able to work while hunting.
Yeah, sort of. So I work in sales and software, and so I'm tied to a quota. I live by a number, and you know, if I hit my quota, I'm kind of to a degree free to do what I want. But yeah, it's, you know, it's a lot of it's remote, and I do a lot of my travel in the first half of the year. So I'll travel between, you know, February and July and August quite a bit for work. And then I tell them that September through November is mine, because the waterfowl hunting thing, it's easy to do in like a weekend. But for those big game hunts, especially if you got to drive out of state or if you're deep in the mountains, because it might take 2 hours to get to your fire road and then another 3 hours to get back to where you want to camp or set up. So, yeah, the flexible PTO type of deal is helpful. This archery season, I've got 2 tags. I actually have a Colorado and a Wyoming tag in bordering units for September. And so my plan is actually probably just I've been looking at Airbnbs out there to do the whole month of September. And that way I can work and get so light out in September still, and during archery season, morning and evenings, that, you know, work 9 to 5, I guess, or 9 to 4 or whatever, like the time kind of works. I go by meetings too. If customers don't want to talk to me, then I don't really have to abide by too many rules.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'll try to hunt every morning and evening during the week, and then use the weekends to either go further or change it up in the area, going to something further in the backcountry or something like that. But yeah, the job does afford the hobby, because if you're, if you can't move around, it's difficult. And I cover California, and I fought to cover the state of California so I could fly to Sacramento for meetings because that's where all my duck hunting buddies live. So, the odds I have a work event scheduled around opening day of duck season in October in Sacramento, pretty high.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really exciting. And I too am also going to be working and in this September coming to Colorado, archery hunting elk, and also there's an OTC bear tag that I'm grabbing. I didn't get the deer tag. I should have doubled on it and gone for it, but I didn't do the drop.
Save the points.
Okay.
It's worth it.
Okay. And
it's worth saving up to like 3 or 4. Don't save any more than that. But if you want like a really good deer opportunity, number 1, don't put in for a rifle season that has an over-the-counter elk tag in that unit. So if it's second or third rifle, try not to pick one of those. But yes, 3 or 4 points will get you a lot of very high quality hunts for mule deer if you have them.
Okay. And you have 5 points, or you're going to have 5 points for your elk next year.
For elk. Yep.
Okay. And that will be a very premium. Do you already know which unit you're going to go for?
I've got an idea. I'm not positive yet, but that's 4 or 5 is the threshold for like archery to get most of the really good tags. And then the next jump is up to like 15 to 20 points, which Colorado's pure preference points, you're never going to catch up. So dumping them at 4 or 5, same with mule deer. By dumping those at like 3 or 4 and dumping elk at like 4 or 5, antelope at 4 or 5, that's kind of the play. Or that's my play. Because I want to hunt more often than waiting 20 years to go once, especially in the state I live in.
That makes sense. You can hunt 3 times as much.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. And in addition, so we talk about hunting and we've talked about conservation, but one additional part of hunting that, once you realize that this is, hunters are conservationists in America, and they spend outrageously more compared to the rest of the population, that the percentage that they put into wildlife conservation, natural land conservation, is way higher than non-hunters. And that's a huge draw for me. But in addition, one thing that, this is food too. And this is meat.
The best food.
Yes. And so you're also a chef in addition to a hunter and a fisherman.
By hobby. Yes. Professionally, no.
I mean, I've seen a lot of what you cook, and it's high quality food, I feel, and you put a lot of care into it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I love doing it. So, but yeah, to your point, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's why we do it, right? But you didn't think about why humans started hunting or fishing was to feed themselves. It's not about the ego thing. I shot the biggest buck or whatever. Like, sure, that's cool, but that's not what it's about. Or not to me. Not to me. Not a trophy hunter. I'm more about filling the freezer. Anything.
Yes, and you do it pretty well. I mean, you've got a lot of good fish sashimi dishes, some good venison dishes. So when did you start, cooking? I mean, did you start cooking wild game right when you started hunting?
Yeah. So I've been cooking before that a little bit. So I grew up with my mom and we had tomahawk fish, and my grandpa and I would a lot of times be by ourselves doing that. So I kind of learned how to cook because him and I were at a campsite or whatever. Cooking fish and then ducks. My mom didn't want to touch them. And so I don't like shooting things I'm not going to eat. That's not part of the program. No one should do that. If you're going to kill it, you should eat it. And I learned hard way because I shot. I got back bubblehead was those are not going to be. And I overcooked it. It tastes like burnt fish, and I ate all of it because that's what you got to do. And so it
Yes.
was like, I better not have this experience again, so I better learn how to make it what it is. So yeah, that's how I started, and then it became like a almost like a hobby type thing. It's right. It's all one thing. Is I don't really buy meat that often. I've got lots of fish. I've got birds. I've got deer. Stuff like that. And if you're in a hunting community, there's a lot of bartering. You can't sell game. You can't sell fish if you're not commercial. You can certainly trade a block of bluefin for a scrap. You want to do that. So, yeah, we operate like a caveman.
That's awesome. And so a lot of people are pretty adverse to game meat because of the taste more so than anything. And so was there, did it take some time for you to learn how to cook game meat well, or,
Yeah.
what kind of, was there like a certain aha moment or anything? Did it take a lot, like, what was the process like for you?
There's definitely always learning experiences along the way, right? So the first one was pretty brutal. The bufflehead sucked. I stopped shooting those.
What was that?
A bufflehead.
What's a bufflehead? Okay.
It's a diver duck. It's the little white and black thing. They're beautiful, but they're not very good to eat. But that's where I started getting picky on what I was shooting for birds, which was right from the beginning to a degree. And I also learned after the fact. Then Mr. Roach told me, he's like, "Oh yeah, if you shoot any shitty ducks, we'll put them in bags and then we grind them up into sausage at the end of the season," which is a great way to eat less favorable ducks. But yeah, you start figuring that kind of stuff out, right? Like the speckled belly geese in California is probably the best waterfowl you could ever eat. It's all eating rice. It's just amazing. Honkers out here, big. They're big. Some of them are like 20, 22 pounds when you pick them up off the ground. Like they're a turkey. They're huge, but their breasts are really, really, can be dense and a little bit harder to cook. So you figure out kind of almost like different cut. It's almost like a different cut of meat, right? Like with a big Canada goose, you probably want to slow cook it. Do something like barbacoa or carnitas. Like I usually do a lot of like taco type of meat with the Canadians, or braise it like a short rib type of deal, because you want to break it down then instead. You definitely can make steaks out of it, and you can cook it that way. But yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. And then the biggest part of it though, with the gaminess, save the ducks and the geese. Waterfowl is just going to be gamier, even if you order duck at a restaurant that's farm raised. It has gaminess to it, right? Same with lamb, right? Compared to like a steak. A lot of it's in the meat care though, and that's where hunters blow it a lot. Is when they shoot an animal, obviously making a clean shot and putting it down fast is like one of not only ethically the right thing to do, but also for the meat makes it better. But then even going to when you go and process it in the field, like even when you're first breaking it down, a lot of guys are really sloppy, and they'll stab their knife back into the animal or something to like store it or whatever instead of just setting it down, like things like that. Like you don't want bacteria getting in any of the meat. You want like as much of that silver skin and like outer layers and stuff intact as possible. So like it basically keeps it's like saran wrapping all the meat cuts. And like trying to take the animal out as whole as possible is really important. Like if you can drag the whole thing out, take the thing out whole. If you have to quarter it, and you can take it out with the skin on, with the skin off. Other than antelope, don't leave the skin on. It'll rot the meat. It's not good. But how you treat it's pretty important. Because the other thing is like aging it is pretty critical if you can do that. So like last year when I shot my mule deer in Wyoming, put them down. I always get the guts out of them. People are all fans of this gutless thing. I think it's fucking stupid. I get it, but it's just
What's the gutless thing?
you don't gut the animal. You basically cut around the rib cage and take everything out, and like that is one way to do it. But I think if you get all the guts out, number one, you're going to cool the carcass down faster by a lot, because that's where a lot of the heat is in the innards. So getting all the guts out also prevents you accidentally stabbing their stomach or their intestines or something, getting shit all over the meat. And then when you do pull the quarters off, and like I started taking quarters off and then go hang them up in a tree in the wind, like as soon as you can. I took the hides off them because I had to hike the whole thing out by myself. So I'd skin them, put them in a game bags, had them hanging in the quakey trees, but at the edge where it was like in the shade, but it was breezy. They were all super dry and cold right away, which is what you want. So doing it that way like helps the meat quality. It also takes a lot of the gaminess out of it. A lot of the gaminess is because guys are not processing them right, and they're not taking them apart right, and they're just being sloppy, and they want to be fast, and the animal deserves you to not be an asshole like that, and like actually take time, follow the seams between the different muscle groups. Like it is very easy to part out an animal. It is very easy. They're built just like a human. If you took an anatomy class, it's the same thing, right? It's just since our shoulder blades are on our back, theirs are on their sides. Like break them down by the joints, follow the different, but like when you get home too, even if you have a pine quarter of a deer, you can take almost the whole thing apart with pretty much just your hands, other than the really strong like ligament connections, because if you're following the different cuts. And so I would recommend to anybody watching, and I learned some of this like watching YouTube, but you don't watch hunters do it, you watch butchers do it, because butchers, their job is to break down animals and to prepare meat. Hunters, especially on YouTube or professional hunters, they're there to sell gear and shoot animals, which is great. Like at the end goal, yeah, they're going to eat it and they need to break it down. They're not professional at doing that. A butcher is. So if you want to learn about the cooking part and the butcher part, watch butchers do that, or watch chefs do the cooking piece. Leave professional hunters do the hunting thing. That's all I would say. If you're choosing where to learn how to do this stuff from, because a deer is just like a cow or a lamb or whatever, or a pig. It's the same. So you watch, like Bearded Butchers is a great YouTube channel, and they break down deer on that channel, and they're professional butchers. So watch how they do it and do it the same way. But yeah.
Wow, that's good advice. Don't leave the hunting, learn hunting from the hunters, and cooking and butchering from the butchers and the cook
And the
chefs.
cooks. Yeah.
Okay. Then I know the gutless method is popular for elk in the backcountry, but I understand for mule deer, if you're not too far out, what do you think if you're in the backcountry? Would you still gut the animal?
Yeah, I would gut it. I would gut an elk too. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's about getting all that out. The other thing is the hearts are really good to eat. If you like liver, the livers are good too. But no, it's more about getting all of that, all the innards out of it, to let it start cooling off. Because if you have like a heat packet basically in the middle of that cavity, your meat's it's decaying. That's not what you want. You want it as cold as fast as possible. Like antelope hunters, a lot of the time, they'll throw a couple bags of ice in the cavity to cool it off while they're still working on it. Right. So it's the same thing. I mean, granted, just because usually antelope season it's hotter, but yeah, you want to get that meat as cold and as dry as possible fast. So yeah, that I don't think there's any case that you should not do that. Personally, it's an opinion, but I think the gutless thing is more to like be lazy than anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned antelope can't have their hide on. Is there a particular reason? Is it because of the season is early, or what's the reason for antelope?
The season's early, and they have just some weird hormones and the way that their their skin operates, that it can kind of just penetrate the meat and start to spoil it. Their hair also comes off very easily. So hair is something you don't want on the meat. So just getting the hide off is a good idea, because if it's still on there, if it is on there, there's probably gonna be little teeny tiny hairs flying around. They get all over everything, and cleaning them up or getting them off is a pain in the ass.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Elliott, we've talked about conservation and hunting and cooking. Is there, before we end, are there any tips that you have for people who want to get into fishing or hunting?
Yeah, fishing I'd say is the easiest. And even if you just want to get into catching, or catching something that you cook yourself or eat yourself, look up local ponds or local rivers or local lakes, and YouTube videos. You can find out what kind of fish are in there. Watch a YouTube video. It's how to catch a bluegill, or how to catch a trout, or how to catch a walleye, or whatever it might be. You can go to Walmart and get a $20 setup, start fishing, go get a license. There's forums online, but like a lot of this stuff you can learn on YouTube for sure. And then just by looking up your state parks and wildlife website. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife, you can look up all the reservoirs, what kind of fish are in there, access points, right? Like where can you go get on the lake, et cetera, or river, whatever it might be. But yeah, the hardest part I think for people is they just need to go do it. For hunting, what I've noticed is a lot of people want to go do it. A lot of people won't go do hunter education. So you can't hunt if you don't do hunter education. You can go to a pheasant farm and go blast chickens that were raised in a coop, and they're fun. But if you want to actually go apply for tags, or you want to go shoot ducks, or you want to do anything like that, you have to get your hunter ed done. And so I would say do that first. It's very easy. It takes a weekend of time. The other thing is gun safety is critical, especially in bird hunting, swinging shotguns around and stuff. Like, you need to know what's going on. And that's why accidents happen, is it's almost always because of people and dogs. Dogs cause a lot of them, but people can mitigate that risk. And going through hunter ed will help a lot. So you have to do that to hunt, and that'll help teach you kind of like what's in your state as well, right? So like Colorado hunter ed, I need to do a couple more apprentice hours, but I'll be a hunter ed instructor in Colorado soon. Our course goes over, the different kind of habitats in Colorado, from our eastern plains, riparian stuff and Platte, to sagebrush flats, to subalpine, alpine, all that stuff. So you'll get more familiar with the geography in your state, what lives there, game animals that you can hunt and ones that you cannot as well. So yeah, I'd say that's the first step. And then if you're like me and you don't have family that hunts, if you have a friend that hunts, like talk to them, try to go with them. If you don't have any of that, I would recommend like ponying up to pay for like a guided hunt. Like you can do a guided duck hunt in a lot of places for $100 to $200, and going for a day, you can learn enough to then go, do something similar on public ground, right? What kind of gear do I need? What kind of things do I need? Like that. It's worth it. And, every guide's going to have different opinions. So if you're just learning, maybe go hunt with a couple different ones and see what you think. The other thing I'd recommend is like volunteering for one of the big, conservation groups. Volunteer for Ducks Unlimited. You will instantly meet a bunch of duck hunting buddies, because that's who's volunteered, are almost uniquely all duck hunters. Go to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Like that's what I did when I came to Colorado. It's like, this isn't a big duck state, it's a big elk state. RMEF is going to be the best place for me to meet guys that are familiar with Colorado, familiar with the units, familiar with the draw program. That's how I met a bunch of guys here, and learned a lot about like how Colorado hunts and how they do it. Right? There's old timers too. There's people who lived there for 50 years, so they can kind of say like, oh well, back then we'd all do this, and then now with the units being different, or et cetera, like we focus on these areas, or like these seasons. Like Colorado moves their seasons every year. That's the other thing, right? So it's like if you're saving points, like do you save an extra year or two because the season's going to be a week later, which for like a mule deer rut could be really important. So things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing to do is to like get out and do it. But the first thing you got to do for the hunting thing is get the hunter ed, and then try to find some kind of community. There's internet forums as well that you can get on. There's like backcountry hunters. There's a bunch of different ones, and you can just Google search and say, internet hunting forum, and you can have a bunch of keyboard warriors telling you everything you should do or not do.
Names.
Yeah, some of them may hunt more than others, but they have meetups sometimes. So like go to those, go to backcountry hunters meetups, backcountry hunter and anglers. They have meetups that they do. RMEF obviously has dinners. You can buy tickets to the Rocky Mountain Foundation dinners or Ducks Unlimited dinners. You're going to be in a room surrounded by a bunch of hunters from your area. That's a good place to make friends and maybe try to get into it. And there will be other people in the same situation, that they want to get into it or they just got into it and they're trying to figure it out. And, it's always easier having a buddy or a friend to go figure it out with too, than doing it all on your own.
That's for sure. And one last question. You mentioned that you like hunting mule deer in the sagebrush because there's a lot of action. What type of action do you mean by that?
I guess it's more that like you can see so far that you're probably going to see animals, where in the mountains, like last year, the unit we were hunting, we were way up there. We were up in that, like, we got all the way up to like 13,000 feet, which was way out of mule deer country, but we had to cross a ridge to get into this other area. Dark timber, sometimes you won't even see them right in front of you. I jumped one last year, probably 10 yards in front of me. There's no way I could see it because there's a bunch of like deadfall all around and he was laid down in it. And like, I couldn't get a shot off because trees are this far apart. It's just super thick. And so blasting into that with, spotting scope or binoculars, like it's brutal. You might pick one up, but then trying to figure out where they go or where they bed down, like the odds are pretty low. If you can't like track them. So like usually you try to catch them in like an opening, like in a meadow or a little sage opening or like standing aspens or something. But I like the sage. That's kind of where I started mule deer hunting too. And I shot my first mule deer in the sage, and so I just kind of like it. But it's definitely not for everybody. It's a lot of driving. Like you just have to cover country. And with a bow, it's incredibly difficult because making stalks into bow range is really hard.
Yes.
So that's another reason I like it, because like it's a little challenging, and I'd rather bow hunt where I can see deer. With a rifle, I'd care less. I could go hunt in the mountains more, but for archery hunting, I definitely would prefer a unit where you're going to see more deer, because your archery stalks are difficult. So you want to have multiple opportunities.
That makes a lot of sense. And with elk, you can call them in, and the way you're hunting them is way different.
Yeah, way different. I mean, my buddy Steve that's shot, a bunch of bulls, and his brother shot a bunch of bulls. Like, they don't even bring spotting scopes and stuff with them because you're going to hear them. You're not going to see them. They're in the dark timber. You might see them moving around, but it's like, why are you going to carry this 7-8 pound thing around when you have to maybe pack out 100 pounds of meat? It's like, screw that thing. We'll bring extra food,
Yes.
So yeah, different loadout for different hunts.
Different loadout for different hunts.
Yep.
Well, Elliott, this has been a great podcast to learn a lot about hunting and conservation and cooking as well. Are there any last words you'd like to leave the audience? You mentioned how people can get started in fishing and hunting, but anything you'd like to leave the audience?
I would just say, if you have an interest in hunting or fishing, like, go try it. If you're not sure it's going to be the thing you're going to love the most, go on like a guided trip, pay $100 and go on a charter boat or go on a quick guided trip on a duck hunt, to get your license and go on a duck hunt. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to be for you. You get your hunter ed card, you have it for your whole life too. So, down the line, you marry some girl or guy that their family hunts and you have one, you can go along on the family pheasant trip and, do whatever. But I would also think about what you're eating wild game and fish that you've caught and processed on your own and everything. There's something special about it. That's why I do it. That's why I hunt and fish. All of that, and like respect the game and the animals. Like, you're choosing to kill them. Like, you're making that decision to take something's life. So don't be sloppy. Like, take care of the meat, treat it right, and eat all of it. And comes full circle, because I think there's a lot of karma in hunting and fishing too. And if you're not playing by the rules and you throw out birds in the trash cans and you do crappy stuff like that, you shouldn't be hunting in the first place. And like, hopefully hunting won't be good for you going forward. So, do right, like contribute to conservation organizations. Like, if you can go do a work day pulling fences for Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, or helping plant tulies for Ducks Unlimited for a day or something, like, go do it. You probably learn something new from the people who are there, and see a different area of your state or that you may not have been to. So be involved in it if you're interested in it.
My guest today has been Elliott Beckstrom. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Elliott.
Yeah, thanks, man.